Hi there, good evening to everyone watching. It's really lovely to be back again with another webinar, and it's a real joy to be able to spend the next 45 minutes talking to you more about how you can incorporate longevity medicine principles into your practice if you're either not interested in doing CQC registration, if you're a non-prescriber, if you are just generally a health enthusiast wanting to learn more about longevity, then this next 45 minutes is going to be really, really interesting. It's going to be very interactive. So I want you to get familiar with the two different options that you've got here for communicating with us. The first of which is the chat function. If you click on the chat, I'd love for you just to drop in there your name, where you're from, where you're listening from today, and your interest in longevity, just so we can find out a bit more about you. And then you've also got the Q&A section. So just save this area for any questions that you want to put to myself or Julie, and we can get back to you and answer those questions for you today. So do jump into the chat, say who you are, where you're from, and it'd be lovely to get to know you a bit more. As for myself, my name is Dr. Matt Plywell. I am the CMO here at Apex Medical, and I'm the one putting together all the course content here in longevity medicine. And it is a real honor to be joined by Julie Gibson-Clark today, who is an absolutely fascinating mind in the world of longevity and in the world of biohacking. Now, Julie and I met at the Longevity Investors Conference in Gstaad in Switzerland, lovely alpine retreat, and really bonded over how we can make longevity medicine accessible for the masses. Julie prides herself on biohacking on a very modest budget every month, and her claim to fame is that she is aging slower than Brian Johnson, who spends a hell of a lot more. So really pleased and really proud to have Julie both as part of the team with me here at Apex, but also joining me on the webinar today so that we can share some of the wisdom about some of the things that you can implement both in your practice, but also in your life to live healthier for longer. Julie, lovely to meet you.
Thank you so much for having me here to talk with your listeners today, Matt, and I am just so excited to be working with you. Like you said, we met in Gstaad, and that was just like, I think we just were like, oh, we need to do this, and we, it needs to be this, and it needs to be that, and it was just instant, chemistry on longevity and how it really needs to roll out, because it's kind of been the billionaire sport recently, and I don't think it needs to, and I hope that my results are proof for that.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I think longevity medicine's been in that billionaire sort of ecosystem for quite a while now, and people have been transfusing their children's blood and doing various other very extreme measures to age healthier and to slow down aging or even stop aging, which a lot of people are really pushing for. Now, as someone who ranked number 2 on the global aging Olympics, rejuvenation Olympics leaderboard, as I say, ahead of Brian Johnson, can you talk us through a little bit about what you do, Julie, and how you are aging very slowly in this regard?
Yeah, so I prioritize food, lifestyle, diet, those things first, and then supplements and all the, as I say, all the things second. So and it was really just because I didn't have the resource, I didn't have $1 billion to spend, and so my typical day is, I wake up early, I work out. I focus on the metrics that I get for nutrition are 8 ounces of greens a day, and then a total of a pound of vegetables. So another 8 ounces of, other vegetables, and then 100 grams of protein. And then I kind of let everything else take care of itself. I don't drink alcohol simply because it really causes a lot of problems in menopause. So it's just not something I even enjoy anymore. And then exercise, I really focus on the strength training as well as a VO2 max and walking, because it's just enjoyable. So, and then the meditation, there's a daily meditation, and stressing that this is about living. And so, always trying to balance kind of my metrics that I'm looking for, maybe nutritionally or even exercise wise, with a life that I have to lead that's going to sometimes get in the way. So.
And that's it, isn't it? Life does get in the way, and it is one of these things. Is when we're having these consults with patients, is that we can't just be focused on what everyone should do by the book. It's got to be something that people can actually implement into their lives. So when you're sort of thinking about this, how do you combat the two? And you say you don't drink, which is really admirable. I wish I didn't touch the stuff myself. As it does, I do enjoy a drink at the weekend. But I always think about it as, you know, I'm paying in during the week and I'm sort of reaping some of the allowances maybe at the weekend to sort of allow myself that balance. And for me, that works. But how do you find that balance, Julie?
Mm-hmm. Well, let's just address drinking and specifically. So it just became it. I mean, even just maybe 3-4 years ago, it was still something I enjoyed, and would have, maybe like you, I had I'm going to be really strict during the week, and then on the weekends, hey, I'm going to have 1 or 2 drinks maybe. Now it's become, for whatever reason, with menopause, it's causing so many negative symptoms that it's just not enjoyable. So it's really not hard to give it up, because it's very painful. The same thing with like overly sugary things. I used to really enjoy baking, and it's the same thing. But I think you asked me, like, how do you live this? So I really focus on, the things that I can control. Typically my weekly schedule, I can keep pretty tight. And so I stick to things very closely. And then on the weekends, I don't have such a tight schedule. You can see on my website kind of what my daily schedule is. And I certainly do not follow that on the weekends. But because I'm eating so healthy during the week, it makes it easy to kind of crave healthier choices on the weekends. I don't go crazy. When I first started doing it, I would kind of go crazy on the weekends. But as you kind of progress along the path, 4, 5, 6 years into this, it's like, oh, it's pretty easy on the weekends to still eat reasonably healthy. But we have the occasional treat. I mean, again, I just can't imagine like a life without bread or ice cream, or the occasional piece of cake. Like, that just wouldn't be life to me. But it's just, I've put them in their proper place, which is like, that's just, icing on the cake a few times a year kind of stuff. So
Yeah, I think everyone's got those little not cheats, but little sort of allowances that you've got to make. And for me, it's the Saturday morning pancakes with my boys. I mean, for me, that's such a wholesome time. But don't get me wrong, these are protein pancakes made with whole foods, nuts, bananas, and various other things. But I really want to touch upon what you just said there, Julie, which is something that's really key when you're talking to patients in clinic about longevity medicine and changing that sort of diet and lifestyle, is that it's not an overnight thing, is it? No one changes from eating really unhealthy with a takeout, or sorry, a diet of 5 takeouts a week, to eating very low carb, high protein, healthy fats, all the right sort of whole foods. Is very much a transition. Now, I have a personal belief that this is down to gut microbiome, and the more I read about it, the more I research the interaction between the gut and the brain, and how cravings are now becoming sort of more and more proven to be linked to the gut microbiome. And actually, it kind of makes sense, because as you gradually starve that sugar, the high fructose corn syrup loving bacteria that are sitting there in the gut, they die off, and they don't send those cravings to your brain anymore. And suddenly you replenish your gut microbiome with a much healthier flora. They're sending much healthier signals saying, actually, I want to have that aubergine, or I want to have that sort of whole food, whole steak or chicken or whatever it might be. And you find it much easier, and that whole pleasure reward pathway is a lot easier with healthier foods. I tried to eat something the other day, and it was a processed chocolate. I don't know why I was doing it. It was a kid's party, and I was like, okay, well, I didn't have much option, and I put it in my mouth. All I could taste was chemicals, and it's amazing how your taste buds can really, really change when that happens. So let's talk a bit more about gut microbiome, because I know we've had some really interesting chats when we were in Ingolstadt. So tell us what your thoughts are on gut microbiome.
Yeah, so I again, kind of, not to, pardon the pun, but gut feeling, I had that sort of same reaction, or that same thought. This was back in like maybe 2014 or so. I started messing around with fasting, and I was reading Jason Fung's book on fasting and detoxification, and so I thought, oh, let me try it here. And then there were some times where I had to kind of white knuckle my way through some hard some hard hours there. I wouldn't go more than like a day at first, and then I'd go back to my diet. But there was something about that must have starved out a lot of these things that were keeping me in this cycle of always craving sweets every night. And that's when I noticed, like, there must be something to my microbiome that's shifting in doing the fasting. And at the time I was doing a ketogenic diet once I was not fasting. So I was definitely starving out those. That's the only thing I could think of in my non-scientific brain, that's what was happening, because I just was no longer craving, the little dish of ice cream. I mean, I was an every night desserts and sweets person. And it just kind of, I don't want to say it disappeared overnight, but it really like took a huge dip. And then over then that last 4 years in sort of incorporating more and more vegetables, it's kind of like it's crowded out, my desire for anything unhealthy. And which sounds like, if you told me that 20 years ago, I would have said you're crazy. Like, vegetables are never going to be more interesting than like a bowl of ice cream, but they are now. And I can't even believe I'm saying that, because I just sound really weird to my older, my former self. But I really think that the microbiome drives everything. And I think if we can get that right, we can really shift, addictions. I mean, I think there's a lot of, like, I definitely know I had an addiction to sugar. And so, it was just driving me every day. I'd say, oh, I'm not going to eat sugar tonight. I'm going to be fine. I'd have the fruit, I'd have the backup stuff. And then somehow it always like weasel my way into thinking, no, I'll just have a little bit of something. And now I can't even, it's like you, like if I have a piece of candy, it's like, I feel like I'm getting punched in the mouth. It's just so offensive, it's just, it's like really heavy. So at any rate, but I think it's a gradual process. They were talking about something that's taken, 10 years for me to shift. It's not like this did not happen overnight by any means. And I think that's the key to success for anybody. When you're working with clients, is really stressing those like small wins, building on another small win and a small win, because we're looking at, a life, like we're looking at the rest of your life. So that's, 40, 50, however many years, you think you might want, instead of like 6 weeks to the beach bod,
Absolutely.
that's
And
just the recipe for failure.
Exactly. And you really are, you're making changes for life here. Now, a lot of our listeners and viewers have actually joined because they are really keen to start offering these types of services to their patients. And some of them may have patients already. Some of them might be setting up new clinics, either in longevity or aesthetics or in another field. And what is really important now is to talk a bit more about the course that we've been working on together, Julie, because what we have noticed is that there are a lot of people out there who are interested in longevity medicine, want to get started. They just don't know how to get into it. And it'd be really good to talk a little bit more about the course that we've been working on together. So, Julie, do you want to tell us a little bit more about this course?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I've got to say that it's a wonderful summary of everything I've learned over the past 26 years, through experience. It's kind of like, hey, this is nicely summarized in one neat package with all the latest information. Maybe some of this information might grow and change, but where we're, the specifics, I suppose, when you're getting into supplementation, there might be something that is discovered later. But the core concepts of, really stressing your diet and your lifestyle, getting those in place, and kind of having this step up function, so that at the very end is when you start adding in all the, if you can afford it, all the technologies and what focusing on aging. But before aging, let's get your diet and lifestyle correct. Let's get your activities correct. Let's get the sleep right. Let's get get all those things down before you start adding
I
other
think that's where
fancy stuff.
we got on so well in Switzerland, wasn't it? Because we both had that same approach. Is there are things that you can do in your diet and your lifestyle that can really change how you feel, how you sleep, your energy levels, all of these things that are relatively quick wins. Because what we're looking for when I'm a practitioner, I want to start with quick wins for my patients. I don't want to be telling them, look, yeah, you're going to be with us for a long journey and it's going to be a long time to see the results, and your gut microbiome takes 6 months to change, etc., etc. I want to say, well, look, we can get you sleeping better by the end of the month. And you know, there are things that you can do in that diet and lifestyle to really achieve that, to hook patients in and actually get them on board as someone who can actually buy into this longevity lifestyle. And I think that first underpinning sort of foundation is so important, really optimizing that diet and lifestyle.
Yeah, no, 100% agree, especially sleep. You can get people sleeping well, they're going to come back again. Okay, he fixed that. And they're going to send all their friends, because that is such a, it's awful. When you don't sleep. Yeah.
Now, let's talk
Okay.
a bit more, Julie, about some of the supplements, because this course is designed essentially for practitioners to take and then start practicing longevity medicine straight away without having to go through any regulation. Now, over in the UK, Julie, we have something called CQC regulation. Now, this is required for people to issue prescriptions for patients for medical conditions. Now, the issue is it's about a 9 to 12 month process. It requires a lot of paperwork. It requires a lot of maintenance, and it's a lot of time and effort that goes into it. Now, people who practice aesthetics or who are just starting out in this private world won't have CQC regulation. So this course offers an alternative in the fact that we're not focusing on prescription medications, are we? We're focusing much more on diet and lifestyle, as you say, but then supplements to target all of those 5 steps of longevity. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about the supplements that you've sort of worked out from your own experience, which we've been putting into the course?
Yeah. So I would definitely say, like, when we're talking about menopause, because I'm, experiencing that right now, the things that I've found, really, really useful: black cohosh, red clover, boron is something that I take. I first, even before I started doing that, I made sure that, like, my magnesium and my vitamin D levels were optimal, and then started kind of adding, because a lot of that can take care of some of the symptoms, like the hot flashes and that come with menopause and the lack of sleep. Ashwagandha, some other basic supplements that can really make a difference, but they are important enough, like, that you do need to look at, like, the contraindications. You need to really make sure that you're not causing problems, because if somebody is going to be taking something, a considerable amount of something for a considerable amount of time, I think you need to treat it as seriously as you would a medication. But yeah, we've been looking at what red clover, boron, black cohosh for for menopause, and then ashwagandha as well, and then looking on osteoporosis, making sure your vitamin D3 and K2. But when we're looking at, like, longevity, we were looking at kind of some of the, I said fiber is like one of them, as we were talking about the gut microbiome, looking at glutathione, resveratrol, and then of course NAD, NMN, and NR for the longevity courses. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a good sort of outlined supplements there. And I think the key is supplements aren't all made equal, are they, Julie? Now, it can really vary based on the dose, the form. When you take supplements as well can be really important. And now, talk me through magnesium. Like, when do you take your magnesium? Because I see loads of different things in the literature about when to take magnesium for sleep, when to take it for energy, when to take it for various different reasons. And just wonder, in your personal experience, do you take magnesium, and when do you take it?
I take several different forms, and I take it throughout the day. So, in general, if I don't have anything, I'll just take magnesium taurate, because I know I have to take a lot. My body specifically requires a considerable amount. It's just my genetics or whatever. But so I'll take magnesium taurate because it doesn't cause a lot of the gastro upset that if you just buy. So there's different forms of magnesium. I'll take a magnesium malate in the morning for more for energy. That might be something that I take during the day. At night for sleep, the game changer has been this magnesium threonate, which is not as affordable as other magnesium supplements, but it is worth its weight in gold as far as, because it crosses the blood-brain barrier. And so it really does relax the brain and helps that with any kind of rumination. It helps me just go right to sleep. But yeah, I take a total of, gosh, anywhere between 900 and 2,000 milligrams of, which is a considerable amount. I don't think most people need that amount.
Yeah. Well, it just goes to show you yourself are taking various forms of magnesium, and it's a bit of a minefield out there when it comes to supplements. I know when I first started in longevity, people were talking to me about supplements, and I just rolled my eyes and say it's a great way to make expensive urine, and that was my mentality, and that was the mentality of a lot of my colleagues, a lot of doctors who I worked with, are essentially saying this is not really a medicine. This is not evidence-based. Like, why isn't there something out there for doctors, for practitioners to actually start finding out more about the science behind this and how they can actually incorporate this into this practice? And this is where I sort of saw a need for this in Apex Medical, and it's why it's great to have someone like you, Judy, to join this approach that we are taking to really try and educate as many people as possible to understand that there is a science behind this. And the reason supplements have got a bit of a bad rep potentially as making expensive urine is that the majority of people are taking either the wrong dose, the wrong form, or medications at the wrong time, and therefore it's not really having any effect, and therefore they chalk it up to this supplement's not really doing anything for me, and they'll come off it. And so having someone to guide them through that, I think, is really important. Now, Julie, I remember talking to you, you were saying that you've done a lot of this through trial and error, and just to recap for people who don't know what the Rejuvenation Olympics are, it's based on a verified biological age, looking at changes to the epigenetics which signal aging process. It's the most accurate way we have at the moment of ascertaining whether the rate at which you're aging on a cellular level. Now, it's a great way to measure trends, and it's a good way to show your patients that they're getting healthier or not in a short-term window, which is really beneficial. And now, to achieve second place on that leaderboard in the world and to beat Brian Johnson, you have somehow on your own managed to work out some of the secrets behind this. And how long did that process take? Is that something you found quite easy, or is it something that you have had a lot of trial and error to get to?
A lot of trial and error. I was very overweight and having a lot of stomach issues when I was 30. I'm 56 now, so at age, like right around age 30, went to a naturopath who had prescribed, a whole nutraceutical protocol, and it really, really worked because I was struggling with depression as well. And I was able to come off an antidepressant and use like a nutraceutical protocol. And I was just shocked at how effective it was. And that was the first time I kind of turned around with like, this isn't just expensive urine. And I just want to back up a little bit on that. Like, I think, doctors were right, because at least in the US, I don't know what it's like in the UK, but most supplement companies are owned by marketing companies, and they don't necessarily, have all the right stuff in there, or it's kind of the cheapest form. It's they're sort of overhyped, and so it's finding those companies that are, as we say, like they're more nutraceuticals, they're pharmaceutical grade, and that they're standard and they test, and so we know that there's something good out there. But so that was anyway. So backing up, so 30 was kind of my first foray into that, and I started working out and thought I was really, really healthy. And then I had heavy metal poisoning when I was in my early 40s, and again went to a functional medicine doctor, and she put me on a whole nutraceutical protocol, and she was the one that kind of showed me, like, these are the companies that you want to be looking for. This is the type of supplements that you don't just go grab them at the grocery store, so that was really, really interesting,
on Amazon,
and really,
as a lot of
on
my patients have done.
yeah. I have a few, but they're pharmaceutical grade companies that I know are really good. So, but yeah, the just your average, don't go with the cheapest form, et cetera, et cetera. So, and in fact, some supplements can even have anti-nutrients in there, like heavy metals that are from the processing on the machinery. And so they're, in the US at least, there's companies that will review supplement companies and rank them and see if they actually have what is in there, and if they have any of these other negative nutrients on board as well.
And I think that's a key question to actually just touch upon here, Judy, for our listeners and our viewers. And I think that choosing a supplement is in itself a bit of an art, and there's going to be a lot of things you look at. Now, Julie, when you're choosing a supplement, a manufacturer or brand, what is it you look for?
I use this review company, Consumer Lab, so I'll check there. But I also I'm looking for the ones that say, you know, they're pharmaceutical grade. So and that I know that like my, you know, brands that I know that my doctors have recommended for me. Then I know, okay, I think this is a reputable brand versus just going to Costco and picking up Kirkland's, whatever, you know. So yeah,
no, absolutely.
they usually will. I don't know if they say on their pharmaceutical grade or not, but yeah.
So they normally, they will normally have pharmaceutical grade a regulation that will be stamped on there to sort of say that they've been manufactured in pharmaceutical conditions in the lab, which means that there's no contaminants, it's very pure. But you're also looking is third-party certificate of analysis. So if I would never buy a supplement or start a patient on a supplement that hasn't had third-party certificate of analysis done. And there's usually 3 or 4 big labs that do these that are quite reputable. So you need to make sure it's been done by the right people or people that you respect and know about. So third-party certificate analysis is really key. Now, we've talked a lot about how to choose supplements and sort of what sort of supplements, and we're going to go a little bit more as we've had quite a few questions submitted already before the webinar, which is great. And I just want to remind the people that are watching is just to put your questions into the Q&A, because it's a really good opportunity to talk to an experienced biohacker like Julie to really find out what supplements that she would sort of recommend and sort of how you might be incorporating into your practice, and also any questions that you've got for me about how we can actually start doing this in your clinic. And we're going to be spending the next sort of 10-15 minutes focusing more about the business side of things, about how you can actually start getting these treatments into your clinic. So do go into the Q&A session or into the chat and just put your questions in there. Anything you've got, we'll go through, and if not, we'll be talking through the questions that have been submitted ahead of time. Now, Julie, let's talk about your journey. So your journey was obviously you had this one amazing person who introduced you to this idea of nutraceuticals, and I love the term nutraceuticals because for people who are in aesthetics are very used to the word cosmeceuticals being this prescription type skincare and so forth. Now it is really important to differentiate, I think, nutraceuticals from supplements, because just like you've said, nutraceuticals are that sort of pharmaceutical grade. They have third-party testing. They are evidence-based, and that comes down to the core of what we teach at Apex Medical. There isn't anything that we have in our courses that hasn't got evidence or scientific literature supporting its implementation in humans. Now, for things like dietary and lifestyle changes, they are huge. Now, we talk a lot about in our prescribers course, we talk a lot about sugar spikes and the link of sugar spikes to insulin resistance, to metabolic syndrome, diabetes, but also into strokes, heart disease, cancer, all these other long-term conditions that can be caused just by simple things like sugar spikes, the more sugar spikes you have in your diet. Now, this is a really important thing, but I was reading some of the content you've put together just on plastics, microplastics, and other environmental toxins, but also things that can really affect your hormones. So I wonder if you could just talk a little bit more about that, Julie, and how there's environmental things that you can really need to avoid, and the evidence is really there to show how much damage it's doing to your body, particularly when it comes to hormone balance.
I mean, in particular, I mean, these are all like let's just talk about like when you go to wash your clothes and you've got, you know, your typical detergent, and then you put the fabric softener in the dryer, and those are just loaded with scents that those scents will bind to your estrogen receptors. And so now you start creating an estrogen dominance, and you're thinking, I didn't even take estrogen. What happened? You know, so same thing with the microplastics. That's the biggest problem, is that they're increasing or they're binding to these estrogen receptors. And, you know, I mean, canned food, I mean, they're everywhere. You're not necessarily going to be able to avoid them altogether, but we do need to be aware of them. And we need to, I think, come up with strategies that constantly detoxify your body. And oh, look at that, exercise, it totally does that, you know. So it's like, oh, no wonder it's so good for you. I mean, if we could bottle and prescribe exercise, it would be like the #1 selling supplement in the world. But at any rate, yeah, so I think that we need to obviously come up with ways to avoid the big ones, you know, what's in our waters, what's, you know, like my mom's suffering from Parkinson's disease, and it's a very clear link between, I'm going to forget the name of the chemical, but it's something that's used in dry cleaning. And I do know, you know, she where she worked, she always had her stuff dry cleaned. So I'm sure that there's a clear link in her Parkinson's to kind of always having her clothes dry cleaned, and whatever chemical that was left on there, has left her with this debilitating disease, unfortunately. So, but I just think that we need to look at like, okay, where are the big sources, and cut that supply off, and then keep our bodies in a state of constant detoxification. The exercise, we can talk about saunas if that's available to people. Certain people are going to have higher levels of these things, and I think certain genetics are able to detoxify the chemicals a little better than other people's genetics as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and we touch upon this on the course, and I think it's just before, because I want to move on now in terms of how our practitioners and clinicians that are watching this webinar, how they can actually start doing this in their practice. And just before I do, though, I just want us to recap what this course is covering. So this course that Julie and I are writing is all about introducing longevity medicine into practice for people who aren't or can't write prescriptions, either because they don't prescribe or because they don't have CQC regulation. But this course is so much more than that, isn't it, Julie? These are a collection of all of your biohacks and techniques and life lessons that you have learned, as you say, over 26 years, you say?
Yeah, 26 years.
And over this time that you have done through trial and error. And I remember you saying to me at the conference, I just wish I had someone to help me shorten that time period and actually jump me right to the end. And that is exactly what the course is that we're creating here. So if you're listening to this, you're watching this, and you are a healthcare practitioner who doesn't have CQC, or a healthcare practitioner who is not a prescriber, or if you're someone who's who's working in the health and wellness sector, like a personal trainer or nutritionist, who just wants to understand more about the science behind longevity medicine, behind these supplements, so you can start recommending them to your PT patients or your nutritionist patients. But also, if you're just a health enthusiast and you want to learn a bit more about the science behind some supplements, which supplements are the best ones to take, and just to try and cut through a lot of the noise that's out there around supplements, because it really is a very noisy field. As you say, a lot of the supplement companies are owned by marketing companies, and they are very much in your face, making all this noise about certain supplements being good for you, certain supplements not being, and it's all trying about cutting through that noise to know what you can take yourself, but also what you can recommend for your patients. And so to that effect, I now want to talk more about how you can start doing this into your practice. So when we talk through the course, when Julie and I talk through the course, we're still taking that same approach that we take on our prescribers course. So we talk about the fundamentals of diet and lifestyle. We talk about hormone balancing, and Julie has touched on some of the exposure to estrogen stimulators that we can have in our environment, such as chemicals in fabric softener and washing powder, but also different supplements that have been shown that are alternatives to HRT for some conditions. So for things like hot flushes. Now, you mentioned a couple there, didn't you, Julie, that you've worked really well for you for hot flushes. I wonder if you just touch upon those again, and how you sort of come to find those.
So red clover is one of them. But the one that I find really successful is black cohosh. And I think I'm not exactly sure if it's working on like the thermogenesis in the brain, or if I think because the red clover is more of an estrogen, like a phytoestrogen, versus black cohosh is doing something with the thermogenesis in the brain. And why am I forgetting that part of the brain? At any rate. So yeah, and those have just been phenomenal. But like anything, you got to look at, like, they could cause liver issues if you're not careful, or if you have other issues. So, we just want to make sure that when you're thinking about it for yourself, or when you're looking at it for somebody else, you've got to make sure that certain things are in order before just throwing it out.
And it comes down to monitoring as well, doesn't it? And I think one of the questions that came in before was about how we can implement these treatments in people who might already have comorbidities. How do you factor that in? Someone who comes in with fibromyalgia and COPD and diabetes and all these other comorbidities, and it's something you really sort of got to take into consideration, and you'll really treat it like a medication, as you said earlier, Julie. That you've got to look at the mechanism of action, look at how it works, look at how this could affect other medications the patient's taking, or indeed other diseases that the patient's taken. So really looking at the science of it, but also monitoring. And you touched on this, it can affect your liver, your kidneys, and depending on which supplement you take. And actually having a form of monitoring is really important. So having a supplement or a nutraceutical regime overseen by a clinician or by your personal trainer or by your whoever it might be that's seeing you, if they are taking ownership and they're saying, well, let's get these blood tests, let's check that, let's check this, we can actually keep track of things. And then they will be able to know when to link into their healthcare practitioner or when to order further investigations. So it's really important that you have that holistic approach to managing of these patients. So you're not just starting them on a supplement and then sending them off with that. We talk about hormones. We talk a lot about menopause on the course, don't we? We also talk about andropause, and we talk about some amazing supplements to increase the strength of erections, increase libido, to really help brain fog for men as well. And we talk about some supplements that have been proven in human studies to really work in this regard and to be alternatives for people who don't want to take testosterone replacement therapy, or indeed for clinics who aren't able to offer this in their practice. So it's a really good alternative, evidence-based alternatives. Now, that's really our foundation course covered. But in the advanced course, we go into a lot more higher level sort of experimental type techniques. Now, we start off with weight loss supplements. Now, you obviously don't take weight loss supplements yourself, Julie, but when you've been sort of researching this, talking through this for the course, what have you found is a really good, just one hack that our listeners or our viewers today can take away to help target that sort of weight loss and help to try and bring some of that fat off?
So I think what was interesting to me to find, and I find this, I kind of found it out in my own, again, personally, I was feeling this, like I finished my work day and I've had, I think I've had almost a pound of vegetables by then, and I'm pretty close to like all the protein I need for the day. And now it's time to make dinner and just sort of top all those off. But I'm usually so full by then, I have no interest. And all I've eaten is like, a bowl of vegetables and some chicken, and then like a protein shake. I haven't had tons. And so then I started looking into what's going on. And it turns out like the fiber from the vegetables and the protein are natural GLP-1 agonists. So like, we're all hearing about Ozempic. So it's like a natural Ozempic to eat healthy. And again, it's just, getting yourself to the point that your microbiome is now kind of craving that. And now it's like, it's just super easy for the weight loss to just kind of shift off, because you just won't be hungry. And so we're looking at, we've created, how do you say it? Like, I want to kind of back up this. So the course has just got such a great framework. We're sort of putting a lot of information out here right now, and it sounds a little bit confusing, but what's so wonderful about the course is it takes everything you hear about in the world of biohacking and longevity and puts it into a really nice framework that you can now, somebody's coming to you, whether they have comorbidities or not, but you're putting it in a framework of like, okay, well, let's look at, your diet and lifestyle. Okay, now let's look at your hormones. Let's kind of take this in a step-by-step process. So then when somebody's coming to you and you can see, oh, I've done a little bit over here and I've done a little bit over here, but you're really kind of creating a framework that's wonderful. So that's that. But yes, back to like what we've discovered for weight loss in, fiber and protein. I'm blanking on the other, but like that are natural GLP-1 agonists, and, just shifting to that type of, like I say, I shoot for the protein and I shoot for the vegetables every day, and everything else takes care of itself because I'm usually just not hungry.
I think that's something
that
I've really learned from doing this course with you, Julie, is that there are so many things you can actually do to biohack yourself and increase your own GLP-1. Well, so you don't need to go out and take these skinny jabs. You can actually do things that have been scientifically proven to increase your own levels. Now, I'm going to carry on walking through the course, but just have a couple of questions come in, Julie. So I'm going to quickly just flip over and go to a couple of questions that we've got. So what someone's asked from our social media live stream, whether or not if you're eating a well-balanced diet, having normal bloods, you're keeping fit and active, what supplements are you taking in addition to your balanced diet? I'll let you go first, Julie, and then I'll chip in.
Okay, yeah. So my supplements are usually based on like working with my doctor that's helped me identify nutritional deficiencies. So I'm always taking vitamin D3, K, and then a K2. It is a combo supplement. It's just one, but it comes together. And then magnesium. And I take a B complex because I just, for whatever reason, my body seems to burn through those pretty fast. So I always take a B complex. I always take fish oil because I just can't. Again, I'm worried about heavy metals, so I don't really eat a lot of fish anymore, unfortunately. So I just take a omega supplement, and I feel like I'm missing something. Oh, and I take like NR for longevity, not nicotinamide riboside, which is an NAD precursor, and I think that's it. I think that's all I take on a daily basis. It's all on my site if anybody wants to see there. But that's, I think with a healthy diet, still, there's just not enough nutrients in our soils anymore. We're still going to need, yeah. I mean, I take like a pound of vegetables a day and half of those are greens, and I still take, as much magnesium as I do. So.
Exactly, and I think I try and get as much as I can from my diet, but exactly as you say, there just there aren't the nutrients out there in the diet anymore to be able to obtain this. But also you can take things that one step further, and that's where the biohacking or the performance optimization comes in, because you can actually use supplements that are so supra natural levels that would never be found in nature. But things like NR or NMN or NAD plus, whilst they're vitamin B3 derivatives, they have a direct action on mitochondria and on cellular energy and on and sleep as a knock-on effect of that. And I think everyone I've spoken to in longevity circles is on some form of vitamin B3 derivative, and whether or not you're in the NR camp, the NMN camp, or the NAD camp is always a topic of interesting debate. But I'll say for our listeners, if you're not on something like that, then it's definitely worth looking into that. And we talk more about the evidence for which one on our courses, and we talk more about how you take it, when you take it, and the best way to get your value for your money when you're starting patients on it as well, so they really notice that initial hit to really get themselves, as they say, those quick wins in that initial instance. Good. Another question has come in. Just get this up. So it was just a question. So do you take supplements according to your blood tests or by symptoms? So Judy, do you have an answer for that? Do you take your supplements according to blood tests or by symptoms? Are you testing yourself regularly? Are you just keeping in check with your own body? What's your regime for taking supplements?
So I would say it's a little bit of both. So like the magnesium that I take is based on a blood test that's looking at my serum levels as well as what's in the blood cells, and so I'll base kind of most of my supplements on that. But like for instance, NR, nicotinamide riboside, I go by how I feel, and some weeks I'll take like 300 milligrams, and some weeks I'll take 500 milligrams, and sometimes on the weekends I take it completely off. But if I go off of that for too long, I start noticing this kind of just general tiredness. It's like, oh yeah, I am 56. So
yeah.
When I do take it, it's like I have the resilience of like a 20-year-old. I can, it's really wonderful. I love that resilience. So I can feel, that's something I take by how I feel. I just know like, oh, I'm just not getting enough. So I'll switch to my 500 milligrams. Or if I forget to take it over the weekend too long.
Yeah. And once you get onto a regime that works for you, I know from personal experience that you don't want to stop. And that's why when you're introducing this into your clinic, or if you're introducing this yourself, once you start something, it's going to have it's going to have a good effect. You really don't want to come off that routine. So that's how we in our longevity clinic have so many people subscribing on a monthly basis, because they're like, I don't want to lose this. I don't want to go back to the way I was before. I'm happy to pay my monthly subscription fee and keep coming back for those supplements, keep coming back for those blood tests, those checkups. And I want to just take a moment to answer Doja's question about these supplements and blood testing. So we absolutely do look at blood tests and we look at symptoms. Now, for example, on our foundation course and this new foundation course, this new course that is going to be available for everyone, we actually look at, for example, in andropause, we look at testosterone levels and we look at symptoms. and we have a complete algorithm created for which supplements you should use based on testosterone levels and based on the symptoms that you are having in order to get the best results. So that is just one example of something that we can really dive in and tackle something very, very specific based on the literature and the evidence that's out there.
Yeah, I think the same. I mean, and also I should just back up, like when I first started taking magnesium and vitamins in general, I felt so good. Now maybe I could go a day or two, but these things do make me feel good as well. It's just that I just take them. I've been taking them for so long. I just rely on blood tests to dial in how much I need.
Yeah. Another question's coming about NMN, NR, and NAD+. And I know this is a topic that comes up all the time. I don't know how many times you were asked it in Switzerland. I know I certainly had that question asked a lot. And I think that the evidence is still coming out there, particularly for NAD+. Direct NAD+ administration is still very much experimental. That being said, I have used it in patients and I've seen some fantastic results. And I think it's a very quick win if you do it right. If you do it right, you get a very quick win, you get a boost in energy, you get a great sleep, and then you can sort of almost replenish what might be missing, and then you can sort of transition them onto a more regular routine. Now, what have you tried? Have you always been an NR person, Julie? Have you tried others?
No, so I tried NR at first and I felt really good on it. But then when I was part of this study, they wanted me to switch to NMN. So I switched to NMN and I found it okay, but it wasn't as nice as I remembered NR. So as soon as the study was over, I got off the NMN and went to NR. I've never done the NAD plus injections just because I heard it, it's quite painful, or it feels like something stepping on your chest or something. I don't know. I was like, that doesn't sound very enjoyable. I'm going to pay for that. I don't think so. I feel pretty good on my NR. So I just kind of go, again, that's something where I just go by how I feel. I've never had my NAD measured. I don't even know if that's measurable, but you'll know. There's just a feeling.
It is measurable. You can do an intracellular NAD plus test. It's very, very hard to get right, and it is very expensive and not particularly useful. I think it's much more useful seeing the response people have to it and seeing their effects in sleep. And I started my own father on NAD. He's gone from someone who sleeps and hasn't. He might even be watching this, in which case I apologize. But he goes from someone who has an afternoon nap on the sofa to someone who's up in the garden all the time, every day. He's got energy by the spades, and you can really sort of notice a difference just from the outside. So I really think NAD has got its place, and I think transitioning people onto a more longer term, something like an NMN or an NR that's a lot more based in evidence. I quite like doing that, so I sort of move people across to that once I get them up and started. And I feel like when you're starting, you're almost doing a loading dose, and some of the clinicians watching us will know what that means. You're doing a loading dose. You're sort of loading someone with a lot of NAD plus to really fill that sort of bucket, and then you're just topping it up with the NR or the NMN as you go forwards. But look, we're coming towards the end of our webinar now, and it's been really enjoyable. I'm very conscious we only really got to stage 3 of the 5 stages that we cover on our course. So very quickly we'll talk a bit about performance optimization or biohacking. Now, tell me about biohacking. How do you, is that a phrase you use often, Julie? Is that something that you relate to?
I call myself the reluctant biohacker because I don't think, just because I don't do all the, as I say, don't do all the things, because you can really throw the fire hose at this. There's just so much out there, but I just quite frankly don't have the resources or the time. And I like to research everything in the way that I quote unquote biohack, because I want to try one thing and I want to try it for 6 months. And then I want to, I would do a pace of aging test, and I might do some other tests and see if it makes any visible difference in those tests. And if it doesn't, then I'm not interested in continuing to spend money on those things, unless I feel like maybe I have a feeling like, oh, this just feels really good. Like NR, it's like, oh, this just feels really good, so I'm going to continue to do it. But I try to keep those things really, what I'm varying is very small. So it's just one thing. And for 6 months, like I was testing out quercetin for 6 months, and it didn't go so well. So I'm not taking it. But
what I really love about this course is that we've got the science and the evidence side that I spend far too much of my life on researching literature and really sort of diving into that side, which I love, and that's fine. But we've also got what works for you, and you are proof of puddings in the eating, and you are living it, and you are, as we know, aging at a pace slower than Brian Johnson. I think that can't be understated, that you are really you're taking the right supplements, what you're doing is working. So combining that with the evidence that's out there, we can really create these protocols that people can actually take and then implement into their clinic. And then obviously finally is the healthy aging, so step 5, and we've talked a lot about NMN, NAD, and a lot of that comes up along with other supplements as well. Now, just want to sort of finally touch upon how people can actually start doing this. So look, the course is going to be going out for pre-order very, very, very soon in the next day or two, and it will be launched at the beginning of next month. So this is going to be going live very quickly. The course is going to be available for anyone really. So for healthcare practitioners who don't do CQC, or they aren't prescribers, for people who aren't necessarily healthcare practitioners but are working in health and wellness and want to offer this as sort of an adjunct to their existing repertoire of treatments, but also those who just really want to learn a bit more about the science behind longevity medicine, behind these supplements. And we don't just talk about the science, we don't just talk about the protocols. What we actually talk about is how you can start doing it, how to monitor it. And a lot of this can be self-led now with blood testing available for people to order either as a clinician or as a non-clinician, getting those blood tests in. And then these courses will teach you how to understand those blood tests, interpret it in a way that will give you a good background to then build your supplement stack, as we call it, onto those blood tests and the symptoms that your patient's having or that you are having, so you can really, really improve your health going forwards. So really, really exciting course. Do look out for it, and it is going to be available, as I say, to anyone who's interested in improving their health or improving the health of their patients in a preventative way. So Julie, as we finish up, any final thoughts, any last tips that you want to give our viewers, and just any sort of one tip, one takeaway that is something for them to really go out and they can start practicing in their life today?
Yeah, they're not going to like this, but I take it slow. Take it really, really slow, and really, really sit down and figure out why would you want to do this? Why would you want to make a change? Because you're going to come up with challenges, and if you can always remember what your why is, maybe it's what you don't want, but maybe there's something that you do want to be there for your kids or whatever that is. But to try to really keep that in mind, and then just make very slow, methodical changes, month by month by month by month, and build very, very slowly. Just, no cathedral was built overnight. It took, hundreds of years to create something beautiful like that. And we have to kind of see ourselves and our health like that as well.
Brilliant. Well, great. Well, Julie, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to everyone else for joining us and putting in your questions into the chat. Anything else that we haven't managed to get to you in time, do drop us a message either on socials or drop us a message on our email, and we'll be very happy to get back to you and give you more information. And look forward to seeing you all soon.